Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PMI Live, episode 119. It's great to be with you. It is not the final Friday of the month. It is the 19th of December, 2025. We're a week early this year due to the summer shutdown, I nearly said then. The Christmas shutdown here at PMI Capella. For those of you joining us on the live streams, it's great to have you with us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. If you would like to join us in the live session and join in the discussion with the chat and the comments, sharing your observations, please do hop on over to pmi.co.uk/webinars, where you can still register and join the live session. As you can see, slightly different format for the end of the year. I'm joined with a cast of thousands, well, 6 at least, of a cross-section of our businesses and business lines. We've got people from consulting, training, learning development, and apprenticeship operations. Today, for a look back at the year in improvement, in the professional experience of these guys who are with us, who've been working all over the place in all kinds of settings, tackling all kinds of problems and challenges, and seeing some great success in different areas. And we're going to try and share some of that with you today. But talking of sharing, this is best shared, and the best comes out of these PMI Live sessions when you join us in the chat with your observations, feedback, comments. And we're not off the hook yet. Yes, it's the final Friday of the year for us. However, keep us on our toes. Keep your questions coming, keep your challenges, your observations. We love hearing from you. And as you'll shortly discover, we love to talk. So if this is your first ever PMI Live that you are joining us with, you'll find all previous episodes, all 118, I can do that maths, all 118 episodes on our Knowledge Hub, which again can be found at pmi.co.uk, and head on up to the top and you will see the Knowledge Hub. They get published a few days after broadcast, but if you have registered and are joining us, you'll also get a copy sent directly to you, along with any links that we share today. Having said that, I'm promising things we may not be able to deliver. That may be the first week of January that we share that email. See my Generate Demand team doing that as I'm making promises for them. However, let's get going. In the room today, we have Mark Allison, Des Kelly, Mary Claire Pedersen, Matt Elwood, Damien Albinson, and Anthony Richardson. Great to have you guys with us. Now, we're going to step through a variety of topics and subjects, but the theme is this year. And we've seen this in PMI and Capella as a landmark year for, let's get the elephant in the room, right mentioned immediately from the get-go. We started this year talking about AI, and we're going to finish this year talking about AI. Not exclusively, I hasten to add, and you'll be relieved to hear. But Anthony and I kicked off the year with a look forward at some of the tools that had started to come about. And I made a prediction at that point, just 12 months ago, that the improvement profession and the improvement industry, thank you, was about to change beyond recognition, and not want to look for confirming evidence. However, I think I have been proved right. And it's been a truly profound year as the pace of change has accelerated. And here's our position to repeat it on AI and the improvement profession. At PMI Capella, we absolutely believe that you guys, the improvement practitioners, the change agents out there, are responsible for ensuring the success of AI tools in your businesses. Now, that may sound like a burden, but why are we saying that? Because AI implemented without context and without process and without improvement tools, frankly, will not be optimized, and at worst case will be dangerous. Big, strong statement, but I firmly believe it. And we're seeing some evidence of that. And it shouldn't sit in the hands of techies. It should sit in the hands of skilled improvement change agents. And we've got evidence to suggest that it's truly successful when that is the case. And you'll hear some of that from my colleagues very shortly. So Dumbo's out. He's roaming around the room. We know he's in here. Let's start talking then. Anthony, let's start with you. 12 months ago, you and I sat down and started to predict what would happen this year. What have you seen as the big changes this year then?
Yeah, so as you're saying that, it reminds me of a slide that we presented together on the idea. I think Dennis was with us as well, on the idea that we were going to slowly start in 25 to see the building of a digital workforce. So not just having chatbots that appear in a website that maybe talk to customers, but internally using these tools to do repeatable jobs. And that's definitely come true. We've seen it in our organization. But as we've been delivering AI for practitioners, AI for leaders, we're seeing it in other organizations, and the pace at which these are being deployed is accelerating. No promise here of magical gains. We're not talking about an agent that solves everything, but we're talking about making people's roles easier, making processes better, just incrementally. And that's why, as you say, it's just taking over continuous improvement.
Okay, so you've mentioned topics of agentization there, which wasn't a thing 12 months ago, I don't think. But anyway, we'll come back to that shortly. You raised an interesting point, though, in terms of not being a magical solution. I think that's at odds with many boards' opinions or many boards' hopes that we're seeing out there. Des, what do you make of that kind of subject topic?
Well, I think first your assertion that this magic wand is at odds with what a lot of leadership think about. I think that is true. I've even just this week we had a conversation where one of our leaders, the very most senior person in that business, says, "Well, you've got AI, you've had it for a year. Where are the changes?" And of course, I think that's wholly unrealistic. But I do definitely support your hypothesis where you say AI and automation, they are fundamentally going to reshape the way we as CI practitioners have to carry out our work. It's a fundamental truth. I think that's going to be. But one of the things I think that I have seen is a little bit of an over-reliance on some of these tools to give us the right answer without truly using your own thinking. So the over-reliance on AI tools for analyzing, for decision making, for maybe problem solving, one of the risks I see is that it's going to erode critical thinking. And I think that's why when you said it needs to be taken into the hands of the CI professionals, as opposed to those who may just be a little bit technology wise, I think that's going to be absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and that theme of critical thinking is really interesting, isn't it? MC, we were talking a few weeks ago around that topic and the expression of it in the learning and development world. What have you seen in that setting?
So the critical thinking piece is absolutely at the heart of this. How do we design interventions with our clients that enable that critical thinking and doesn't replace it with simply asking an AI engine to actually answer the question? That doesn't facilitate that deep level of thinking. What we're looking for in learning is that transformation. We're looking for changes in behaviours, not just a transfer of knowledge, which absolutely the AI can help with that first step. So what we've been doing in the L&D space, and it's happening broadly as well in terms of the research I've been doing, is how learning methods are changing and how those methods can be adapted not only by those who are creating the training interventions or learning interventions, but by the learners themselves. And that's where, for me, the AI is giving the most significant benefits. It's allowing people that accessibility to learn the way that works best for them and deals with a lot of challenges we've had historically in traditional methods of learning and development. It allows learning to become more efficient, effective, but for me, the bottom line of this is the adaptability piece. We can take a piece of written content and turn it very quickly into audio content, and actually vice versa. Learners, it's enabling learners to be able to learn at a pace that works for them and in an environment that works for them, which links into one of the biggest changes I've seen this year is much more acceptance around the multimodal models of learning and development in terms of both the blended, but also being able to set more research assignments so people can take accountability for their learning and go as deep or as broad as actually their motivation takes them.
And you know, I've been in this gig for nearly 22 years, and in that time I've seen three big shifts in appetite in that arena in the L&D space. First was in the financial crisis, when back in 2008, when I was finally able to stop persuading people that e-learning didn't need to be resisted entirely all the time, and then suddenly overnight that changed. And then the second was in the pandemic, where there's higher acceptance of virtualized environments for learning. And I think we've seen a third wave this time. Oh, no, that was a COVID reference. Sorry. Third wave happening in the last 12 months with the addition of the AI tools as well. So it's a great point. I'll come back to you shortly, MC, for some practical examples of catering for L&D specific needs as well, because I know you've got some interesting ones there. And we're going to be sharing some links, folks, which Neil will share into the chat during the session. We're also going to put those in the email that we'll follow up as well, so don't worry about having to capture them during the session. Mark, I'm going to come to you now. What do you make of all of this then, and what examples have you seen in your practice?
I'm loving it, Rich. To be fair, I'm really enjoying dipping my toes into the AI world at the moment. I think it's something that I'm still scratching the surface with at the moment, but in terms of the work that I do every day now, I'm sitting thinking, going back to that critical thinking rather than just being a tool, but sitting thinking, what is the work that I'm doing today, and how can AI potentially support me in terms of wanting to try and accomplish in a way?
Yeah.
Which is always a question I ask myself: is, are there any tasks that I'm doing in the process that I'm operating? Is there anything that's maybe what I call mundane that can maybe be helped by AI? But when I'm using things like Copilot or ChatGPT for support and things like that, I'm always thinking to myself of also, what am I learning from why I'm using this, and has it helped me in any way in terms of increasing my knowledge, my skills and my behaviours via the use of AI. And specifically, I've been using it to help transcript calls that I'm on, to help summarise a lot of the stuff that you'd usually write down on paper, and then you can't really read your own writing, which is a good thing. But also to help the learners in my apprenticeship cohort when we're carrying out progress reviews or coaching reviews. It's been a real benefit to again summarise all of the key discussion points, next steps, and share that back with the learner. However, one of the key things I do want to finalise on is there's still human intervention, as we know, required to make sure whatever we're sharing back with our learners at the time is accurate and reflective of that discussion, because we all know that AI can still pick things up incorrectly. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm still at the early stages of it, but I'll continue to practice and learn as much as I can from it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've just reminded me of one of the sessions one of the PMI live sessions that we did earlier in the year, which Anthony led as well, which was why artificial intelligence needs human intelligence. It's a great episode actually, because it really helps build on that point that you make, Mark. That it's an auxiliary tool, and you need to be clear on the context and where it's needing the benefits that it's going to deliver. Mark mentioned apprenticeships earlier on. I know the majority of your work this year has been in that arena. What's that space looking like over the last 12 months?
Yeah, so over the last 12 months, I think I've kind of seen 4 approaches really that have been adopted by future practitioners. Approach 1 would be maybe used as a research assistant. So maybe there's some particular content within the curriculum that's piqued their interest, and they've used the AI to go further into that research and therefore develop their knowledge about certain concepts. Point 2, I would say some learners have been using it as a kind of comparative analysis tool. Okay. So they've been challenging their own recall to remember certain theories, certain concepts, and that requires them to recall information, which is going to be useful for those individuals when it comes to their assessments. And they've then just been comparing that information versus what the AI has been able to generate, therefore giving them opportunities to spot gaps in their knowledge. Point 3, I would say AI as a tutor. So a lot of the times I'm seeing learners use AI to generate a series of questions which they can then use themselves to practice answering that question in a kind of accurate and appropriate manner.
Okay.
I've also seen it used in maybe a fourth dimension too, which is to generate outcomes for evidence, which I kind of would proceed with caution, really, because the question in my mind then is, what have we learned? If we're simply using AI to kind of generate outcomes, what are we actually learning? How are we going about our learning methods? So there's four main themes really from an apprentice's perspective. From my perspective, very much like Mark, I've been using agents to assist me with progress reviews, to assist me with assessing evidence, and just generally dipping my toe into the world of agentive AI, really, to help me to improve practice.
Interesting. So a great lead. We didn't practice that, I promise. Damo, I know one of your big successes you've had this year is a really practical example of using an agent that an AI agent that you built. Do you want to tell us a bit about that? What was the context? What did it do for the process, and what were the outcomes?
Yeah, so I was helping a client on a big project to do with compliance. They'd been audited. It's to do with logistics and moving equipment around the world, and they've been audited and been found to have a number of anomalies in their process. And one of the tasks they were trying to undertake is where they had to classify the item they're shipping using an external website, a governmental website. And I had a go at doing it myself. It's a really, really complex process. There's so much information you've got to try and digest. And every time you select a certain category, it then opens up a brand new list, and you've got to find, the item in there, and then it goes on and on and on. If you make one wrong turn in that process, you end up in completely the wrong area, but you still think you're in the right place. And as it happened, I'd only recently received some training myself on the building an agent, which was delivered by our colleague Anthony, who's on the call. And so I just saw that as what a great opportunity where an AI could really make very light work of that task. And it wasn't so we were trying to necessarily avoid the burden of doing it, like the time constraint. It was more around getting it right or avoiding making a mistake. And building the agent literally took minutes, and we trialed it and demonstrated it to the client, and the client, I guess you could say, their jaws were on the floor. They were absolutely gobsmacked that this thing could do, and it didn't just get the answer for them, it gave them here's a range of things I think it could be. So there's still a human element there to verify it's done the right thing. But I thought that was a good opportunity of using an agent in the right place.
Yeah, indeed, and it's interesting because that particular setting was taxation, wasn't it? And if only if only the authorities could keep up with this, I think it would improve the access to the wealth of information, particularly in European nations like the UK, where we've got massive amounts of government websites. And making them more navigable to abide by rules and regulations and navigate them successfully. It was a really great example that had big numbers attached to it, didn't it, in terms of the cost of inaccuracy in that process that you were working on?
Oh, we're talking well into the millions in terms of the other opportunity I found also in 2025 was using AI to help me to build something for the client. So the client was in construction, and they had a very manual process of how they try and forecast the plans looking forward. It was done in Excel, very, very clunky. And again, I recognized that there could be a far more efficient way of doing that with many, many more features. I knew that Excel could do that, but I didn't know how to make it do it. I mean, I'm not bad on Excel, but I'm not brilliant. So I used AI to help me break that task down into more bite-sized pieces. And the products we ended up out the back of the products we ended up with, we demonstrated and piloted with the client, and they've liked it so much and found it so useful that they've now put that forward to be developed into a proper piece of internal software. So it's, again, but there's no way I could have built that last year without AI's help. I just wouldn't have had the knowledge or the skills to be able to get it to do that level of sophistication. So again, I think that's circling back around to some of the earlier points, if you use it, if you'd have just said, build me this tool, which is how most people might have approached that, you probably wouldn't have got anywhere. But if you break it down and use it as a companion, so to speak, then I think that's a better way of using AI for getting stuff done as a CI practitioner.
Yeah, indeed. And I think what you're making a very clear case for here, Damien, is using the improvement tools. And this is just one solution within it, because you're developing opportunities for both automation and agentization or AI intervention. And it's useful to adapt those tools. So, for example, trusty old flowcharts, when discovering opportunities for improvement and quality concerns, as they traditionally were called, having a column for automation opportunities and AI opportunities is key to keep those things moving. But they work, and that's the thing. I mean, Mark, the project that you mentioned that you were involved in, we did exactly that, didn't we? It was an enrollment process, customer service process in essence. And throughout the detailed learn about the process stage in the project, there was a column there for what opportunities do we think they are. Being very careful, though, not to put the solution as part of that, but identifying the opportunity at that stage. And the reason that's so important, because so is not to bias your thinking and bias the outcomes. And it's about that discipline that's so important, isn't it? Particularly with tech, where it's damn hard. Anthony, your thoughts on that subject in terms of adapting the tools and using trusty old tools like flowcharting in the age of AI?
Yeah, in fact, it's one of the great successes we've had. It's one of the good pieces of feedback we've had from the AI practitioner interventions we've been doing. So one of the things you can find yourself, or one of the dead ends you can feel like you found yourself in when you're trying to use AI is, you sat in front of this blinking cursor and you keep getting waffle back or something not helpful from an AI, or maybe even errors, and you're just struggling to even figure out, so what do I type into this box? What am I asking? How do I craft this? And all the advice you'll get online is around, give it a good role, an objective, some constraints, be super precise. But about what? And actually, as you say, using some of those, adapting some of those tools, flowcharts, particularly the SciPOC, actually, taking SciPOC thinking and actually asking, well, what's the process? Who's the customer? Who's the supplier? What are the expectations? What are we trying to achieve? What are the sources of variation for this process? What are the things that we'll have to think about that could change? Formats of things coming in, levels of detail. Hang on a second. If I just read this SciPOC and rephrase it as an objective, that's my instructions. And in doing so, it lifts you out of the dead end of, how do I write the magic spell that just does this step in my job for me? And into, how do I work with this intelligence to deliver some value within this process?
Yeah, that's a really, really neat example. And you could easily say there's nothing new under the sun here, but it's about resisting the temptation to dive into the technology solutions, which the tech vendors make damn hard, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And the thing you're talking about in terms of developing the prompts there, Anthony, if you look at, I don't know, a tool like Copilot, for example, and you look at, there's hardly any guidance as to what these boxes are for. And it's really, really key. We've actually just had a really interesting comment there about operational definitions. Absolutely, they stand here front and center. They're as relevant as ever. So back to my original point, why this is important to the improvement community and the improvement practitioners. It's for that very reason, that this is how to make them most effective. So Anthony mentioned our AI practitioner intervention. He's referring to some of our training courses that we've developed this year. Neil's going to share a link to some of those. We've got 3 in the portfolio. One's a leader program, practitioner program, and the other one I'm about to forget. Oh, an awareness program. Thank you very much. Got there eventually. We've got open cohorts running for those in January and February. So if you would like to chat about them, give us a shout. And Anthony himself is leading them, I think. Indeed. Do join us for those. And again, those are customized to the improvement community. Making them effective in that context. So let's think about some of the challenges of 2025. Desmond Kelly, you've been around the block a good few times, I think, and have experienced annual fluctuations, changes, initiatives galore. When we were talking earlier this morning, you mentioned some of the client-facing challenges that you've had this year. Do you want to take us through one of those?
Well, I will, but I want to say overridingly, what I would say is 2025 has been quite exceptional because of some of the really fabulous stuff we've seen. And so I think when we were asked to consider what are the challenges, actually that was quite a challenge in itself. But one of the probably the greatest inhibitor or challenge that I've come across, because most of my work is done with large organizations, I suppose, and one of the things I still see as being the inhibitor is this inability for leaders to recognize their organizations as complete systems and to treat them as complete systems. We have seen some really, really good work this year where the strategy development within organizations has actually managed to attach itself to the CI work that's done. So CI is considered a way of delivering the strategy, and I think we've been pushing for that for substantial times, and I have to say so many organizations have got that message and do it, and I think it's fantastic for it. However, it's a little bit sub-optimized on maybe one, maybe two occasions where we are still overly focused on functions or silos, and that really is a little bit of an inhibitor in there. But I've got to say, I've got to be really careful. On a column of really good, this is something which I actually prepared. Now, we maybe need to still go a little bit further for that and help that. But that's the only, that for me is probably the only thing that when I really had to stop and think about it, well, what is really irritating at the moment? It would be is our inability to think system wide. And once you've liberated the thoughts of that within organizations, then when you've attached all of the other great things that are happening, then the sky is the limit. It really is. It's unbounded. And I think that's really exciting. So disappointing on one side, but exciting. So exciting on another.
Excellent. Thanks, Des. Mark, thinking about this topic of challenges, what have you seen and learned in that arena this year?
Yeah, again, it's another personal challenge, to be fair, but it's probably from a positive perspective as well when I put a spin on this. So I was asked in June this year to lead my first ever apprenticeship cohort, which again was challenging, but also exciting when I got asked to do that. I had to get used to new processes that I wasn't familiar with. I had to adapt to working new learning management systems like OneFile, for example, that I wasn't used to working with. Not just delivering training to maybe 12 people for 5 days that then I might not see again. These were 16 learners that I now need to look after pretty much on their journey for the next 12 to 18 months, which again was totally different to me. Dedicated coaching sessions, having to learn more around about our safeguard and prevent policies. So a lot of new stuff for me, where I've failed in some things, which is good, because again, I think failure leads to success, and you need to fail sometimes to get better. So again, the journey I've been on, Rich, I think for that specifically has been a challenge, but it's also helped me to learn so much more. That's gonna help increase my skill set, I think, in terms of that, and how I can ensure that some of the guys I think are on this call that are in my cohort can be successful in their journey and hopefully achieve a merit or distinction in their improvement apprenticeship. So that's probably my biggest challenge, along with some many failures along the way that I've had to kind of reflect on myself, learn from, and then try again pretty much in a different way. So really, really good.
And I think my observation from the outside of that specific example that you're talking about, the reason you've managed to turn that into a success is because you've gone at it with a CI mindset and identified rigorously and relentlessly the opportunities for improvement in those processes that we've been able to action and work on in real time for the benefit of learners. And that's the difference, I think. And it is about mindset for me, because that whenever anyone's asked to deliver a new service or be part of a new team or something, it's so easy just to spot the things that are wrong, and some of those you'll be correct, they will be wrong, and some of those are about understanding, learning, training, all of that stuff, but doing so in a constructive manner that is actionable So they say you spot something in learning materials that's actionable for someone like, you know, Marie Claire, who runs our L&D team, is essential. Otherwise, it's just noise. And, you know, as improvement practitioners, we can be on the receiving end of a lot of noise, can't we? MC, the example I mentioned earlier on, for support for learners with specific learning needs, a really practical one, and it is back to AI, which isn't which isn't intentional. It happens to be an AI solution, but I thought that's worth sharing today because I find it really interesting and really useful tool.
Yeah, absolutely, and there are a number of people on this call that have worked with learners as well with that tool, and I think it links into the challenge is for us to keep up with the technology that's being developed, and actually keep engaged with our learners and find out what it is that they're using, how they're using things, and one of the things that one of the tools that we've been looking at and actively working with is Notebook LM, and again, it's evolving all the time, but that ability to be able to turn resources into multi-format formats just allows that to the accessibility piece, and not just for those with additional learning support needs, but more broadly. You know, we all learn differently, so that ability to be able to, you know, take some material, turn that into a podcast, listen to it while you're out on walking the dog, if that's the best time to develop additional insight for yourself. Again, different people, different ways. But as I say, a number of people on this call with us today, they've been working actively with the learners to do that. So
yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing for people to think about in project contexts as well. Because do you understand how your audiences that you're trying to influence, how they best absorb information? Have you any sense that you ever asked them, or do you just send them the PowerPoint and hope that they read it? There's a lot of tools out there to help, and the key thing now is it's easy to do. It's not a burdensome process, and so you don't need to create multiple versions of the same thing manually. And yes, it's an AI solution, but it's really interesting in different mechanisms for imparting information for different learning styles. One, for example, I use all the time is we've got Copilot licenses. In Teams, you can turn a Teams meeting into an audio summary, which is just so good. It's a podcast style. It introduces two different voices and turns it into conversational audio summary. So you don't need to sit and watch the entire meeting back, whoever does that. But instead you can get the pertinent points that the AI picks out in a conversational style. It's amazing to hear it doing it, and I'm sure some people on the call are using this stuff all the time, but when I discovered that earlier in the year and realized that I could summarize, it matched my learning style so well, and a few of my direct reports have clocked onto it and are now sending me things like that because they think they can get my attention better, and they're probably right. MC.
Yeah, and building on that, things like, so again, when we're running workshops and we want learners to be actively engaged in the conversations that are taking place, as opposed to capturing notes, again, Copilot's capturing a really, really good summary of what's gone on during that session. And yeah, I'm being very, very impressed with what it's able to do. Another tool that we use, and anybody who's had interventions with PMI will probably have used Miro with us. And again, that's this year they have done so much work to improve how that functionality is, again, for different people in different ways. Yeah, and they have really seriously invested in the AI element of it, to make it really easy for facilitators, for learners to capture the output. And I certainly see that being one of the, for me, that's one of the biggest changes this year in terms of supporting everybody involved in CI. our biggest challenge has been keeping up with that and knowing what those changes are and what else is coming along, and bottom line with that one is having the open conversations with lots of different people, because people are being exposed to and seeing lots of different things and going, oh, have you come across that? Have you tried that? What does that look like? And trialing it. So again, back to the PDSA piece. Right. Have a go.
Nail on the head. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, MC. Anthony, challenges from your perspective. And I remembered as we were coming onto this call that earlier in the year, you and I and our colleague Dennis did a rapid fire live broadcast on the event of the DeepSeek, the challenge of the DeepSeek AI agent. That's all gone away. So the threat that was perceived by everyone and everything. So what have you seen the biggest challenges? Not necessarily just in the AI space, by the way.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple actually. I'll start not in the AI space, and I'll come back to it.
Yep.
So working with apprentices in business analysis, there's an interesting challenge that seems to still be happening quite frequently in 2025. It's not necessarily a new challenge, but it seems to be one of the biggest changes in the Agile space. And this is where an organization, understandably and for great reason, wants to experiment with Agile approaches. And so they want to pick some team in the organization and say, well, let's trial this approach. Would this help? But what they do is they pick a team who happen to be a team, but perhaps not actually working on the same true product. They're all actually, if you look, they're working on different things. And this unintentionally creates a situation where actually prioritization and collaboration becomes very difficult, because we're not actually prioritizing work against work that it could be prioritized against. These are different things for different people, different projects even potentially. And so when business analysts or when Agile practitioners of any kind find themselves in this situation, things can get a little bit tricky. And particularly if they're new to it, they can't put their finger on why. And so just helping them understand that one of the things they can do to help is to cluster their efforts around things that do have a unified project goal has been helpful to them. But it does seem to be quite a challenge, I would say.
Yes, yeah, indeed. It's an interesting one, isn't it? But again, someone mentioned in the chat earlier on about operational definitions, and deferring back to that, to making sure you're all talking about the same thing, is relentlessly powerful. And developing the skills to pick up when someone's going astray with the topic. Des,
just picking up on something that Anthony said there, because you stimulated thought in my head, because one of the really joyous experiences I've had this year is working with a client who really is focusing in on their project management techniques and the acceptance and realization of the different types of projects you've got. So the defined project or the empirical project, if you've got those things. And where we've had some great success over the last 12 months is actually understanding both the similarities and the differences of those, and understanding how that can actually work. So I suppose that you just gave me a stream of consciousness there, Anthony, because I hadn't really seen that as a big change, because if you like, it just grew throughout. And it's great. Maybe it's not just this last year, maybe it's over the last 2 or 3 years. Because we used to hear people talking about Agile and hear people talking about things which weren't Agile. And I think what's actually happened in the last 12, 18 months is people actually now really appreciate what Agile actually means. And I think that's quite useful. So if we've got people listening who, when they think of Agile, just think about meetings standing up or things done fast or things done with not a lot of effort, that's entirely wrong. It really isn't. It's a very, very considered approach. And I think that's, you stimulated me there. And I think actually that is a win for this year, is the recognition of that delineation between defined and empirical. And I think that's really great.
Yeah, indeed. Matt, can I come to you about this topic of challenges? I know you've got some interesting takes from your work.
Yeah, I think the first point I would raise has been a point of reflection, really, about I guess the recognition and understanding that all improvement is not necessarily just done through projects. And it's that recognition that, you know, you've got to think about, to use Mark's phrase, the kind of daily mundane tasks that we work upon, and how do we manage those tasks, and how do we maintain and improve those tasks. I think that's been a really important point of reflection for me, and I see it as a challenge that 2026 will be met head on. How we can improve the daily work that we do. Mm-hmm. I think there's definite challenges around communication within systems. It's pretty clear that we kind of all know what we need to do and how we need to do that, but sometimes have we questioned how people feel about that, or why we're indeed embarking upon that change, and how communication is really key to any kind of deployment of any improvement. I think reflections around missed opportunities for myself to learn, and the recognition that my practice can forever improve as long as I have the correct mindset. So there's been lots of different nuanced challenges this year, Rich, but I wouldn't say there was one overriding theme that challenges me, but I'm picking up lots of different messages. I'm generating my own theories about what their challenges are, and I'm thinking about, well, what can I do next to bring about an improved condition, not just from my own personal practice, but also how we can share that within organisations.
Okay. We've got a question come in on the chat, which, by the way, folks, do contribute your thoughts. How's this resonating with you? Have you got any reflections? Is this looking like your world? Is it different? Let us know. So, Damien, I'm going to put this question to you. You'll be delighted to hear. Which alternative models should I consider as an improvement practitioner? I find the field overwhelming. Should I stick to what I know, stick to what my company offers, or explore more?
Okay, assuming that question is about CI models or
yes, indeed,
AI models. Yeah.
Yep.
So, well, this, I think this is something that I've seen again as a challenge this year. I don't think it's necessarily a new one. I think this is something that organisations still struggle with, which maybe links back to Des's point about this idea of seeing the business as a system, or the lack of organisations doing that. So I'm running an apprenticeship cohort this year myself, a level 5, and there quite a few of them are running up against this exact problem, where their organisations don't seem to have a single planned out strategy of which problems fall into which approach. Or even which approaches are on offer. And if you start going around different departments, you find that there's little pockets of different disparate improvement activity, or none at all. But when you try and stitch all of that together, it gets really quite messy. So I definitely think that's something for CI practitioners to support their businesses with. So I suppose if you don't have any, then start out with something, but somebody in the organisation, hopefully fairly senior, needs to make that decision about, well, which are the ones that we want to standardize or have in our offering. And we typically talk, I think we've talked in previous webinars about different tools that are on choice, but you've got to think about the range of complexity. So at what point does something become a full-blown Sigma based project-based approach versus what Matt mentioned is just handling the everyday. Not everything can be a project, and vice versa. So most organizations tend to have a mechanism for dealing with kind of relatively simple, short interventions for improvement, usually then something in the moderate space, and then something again reserved for the far more complex, slightly more strategic. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but it maybe gives some direction of thought there, perhaps.
Yeah, it does, and I think the what I would add to that is absolutely explore more, always, every time, whether it's a technology tool, an approach, or a CI approach, but also different applications of those approaches as well, because there's not just one flavor of your favorite old tool, and there's lots of different ways to look at it. And you heard Anthony describing there a way that when someone came up with developed the SciPoc templates, never in a million years would they have imagined it would be applied to a generative AI solution development that possibly could become cognizant sometime in the next few years. Never, and yet it works, and it absolutely works. Anthony.
Yeah, I really wanted to touch it because that point about if you're interpreting this question purely through the AI model point of view, it's a really interesting question. The thing I keep saying to people is have a core plus explore mentality. So if you're in a Copilot organization, you should be using Copilot, particularly for anything with sensitive information. But even within Copilot, there are different models. There's usually like a fast model or a slow model. Recently, we've had, do you want to use the 5, I think it's GPT-5 model or the one before? So even if you're talking about in your organization, there's still some exploration to be done. And usually these will be differences between the speed, the quality of the response, it depends. But then as well for these other tools out there, yeah, we want to have that explorative PDSA mindset, just being cognizant if we are going outside of that to check the policy and then really think carefully about the data we're putting in there. So I think it's a great question, however you look at that.
Well, indeed. Okay, so we've got some questions coming in, which I'm going to turn to now. So a very practical one, and one I haven't seen in a while, but it's a great question. MC, I'm going to come to you with this one. I completed my Greenbelt course earlier in the year and have finished my first improvement project with amazing results. So thanks for that, PMI. This is not a planted question, I promise. My question to the panel is, how many improvement projects would you recommend having on the go at any one time? MC.
Great question. And here comes one of our core answers.
Come on, bring
depends.
it out. Come on. Hey! There it is.
So yeah, it does. It very much depends on what your role is. So if you were a full-time improvement practitioner, and even at Greenbelt we see those in organisations, then it's going to come down to, well, what types of projects are you working on? What's the complexity of those? And it's going to come down to the process that you're operating within your organisation to identify the improvement opportunities, how they're scoped into the various types of methodologies that we've just talked about, what then sits as a project, and then the piece around the chartering to understand what resource requirements you're going to need, what the time frame is going to look like for that. Because one of the biggest challenges I've seen over my career is where the will is there and the motivation is there, but you end up, if you're running too many projects at the same time, you're straining the resource, because if there are themes there, then it's going to be the same people who are on the projects, and you risk the quality of the solution that comes out as a result of the project. What we would advocate is, and again, looking at the scoping of projects, thinking about the time frames and almost scoping down and delivering more, as opposed to trying to run too big a projects or too many big projects. And it's got to link back to the organizational strategy. What's the number one goal of the organization? What is it primarily trying to accomplish in the immediate time, and make sure that those projects are directly aligned to that.
Yes, interesting. So it is an age-old question. It's an age-old challenge as well. At organizational level and CI practitioner level, how many projects, how much strategic change and process change can an organization handle at any one time? And it's nigh on impossible. The key for me, and this is very personal because it's something I drive our strategy within PMI, the only way I've found to even attempt to get it right is by listening constantly to the organization and accepting that if you've got it wrong, you need to back off in terms of quantity and volume of change that you can push through. But if you chuck strategy over the wall and walk away and don't listen to what the implementation sounds like, looks like, and feels like for both your own people and your customers, you don't stand a chance. And your organization, your change initiatives will fail. And I think the same boils down to that question, to be honest, that how many improvement projects can you handle at one time? Be prepared to back off if you can't do justice to them all. Then you've got too many. But you should never stifle ambition, and that's a really difficult balance to strike. Damien, come to you on that.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to share just from my own perspective, so whether if it's useful, and actually my old change manager is actually on this webinar in the audience, so he might correct me on this, but I think when I was a full-time change agent at Greenbelt level, I think I probably at times had about 4 or 5 projects on the go at the same time, and that was probably about enough. There was lots of smaller improvements wrapped around those, like running Kaizen events and so on. But in terms of running that classic Greenbelt, 3 to 6 month kind of window. Yeah. But in my experience over the years with PMI, virtually a good 90% plus of Greenbelts that I've trained are not full-time change agents. They've got a day job. So they're doing projects on top of some other role and responsibility, in which case I'd probably advise don't try and do more than one. I say to all my delegates when I train them at Greenbelt level, it's better to do one project and do it well and deliver something and get the learning from that than to try and burn yourselves out with being too ambitious. But I think once you get more practiced, and the tools and techniques become more familiar and almost like second nature, you can probably afford to take on more. But certainly short term, if you've just done your Greenbelt training, I'd say stick to the one for now.
If I could just add one more point.
Sure.
And again, think about what your organisation, how your organisation is set up. Does it have a project management office or a program management office? What other support is there around you? Because remember, as a Greenbelt, you're an expert in the methodology and the improvement tools and technology, the improvement tools and approaches. Is there others in your organisation that can handle the project management piece?
Indeed. Okay, we're going to take one final point here before wrapping up. Somehow we're nearly at the hour. Thanks everyone for your contributions. It would be remiss of me not to pick up on the point that someone's put into the chat around, and this is back to AI again, around the resource usage that the AI tools have. And there's lots of talk around the rapid growth of both chip manufacturers and particularly data centers. And I was reading with open-mouthed horror the percentage earlier in the week, the percentage of US data centers that are being used are using dedicated gas turbines rather than renewables such as solar and wind. And also the adaptation by some of the aircraft manufacturers to aircraft engine manufacturers to transition their engines to power data centers. This stuff is not without application. If you ask me, it's going to take legislators a while to wake up to that, but they will at some point. Frankly, I think the key is in the technology providers' hands, where they should be making users aware of the environmental impact of generating yet another silly image. And do you really need to do that thing? And there's all kinds of horrific stats out there about the amount of water that's consumed. And our colleague Dennis Cromentine-Marsh, I think it was last year, we had quite a long session in a PMI Live where we talked about resilience and the importance for process design for resilience, and environmental resilience was included in that. Think about the operational environment, and we can't just ignore this with the AI solutions. So it is key to start thinking responsibly about this stuff. And frankly, our legislatures are unlikely to keep up. So it's our job, I'm afraid, to start being conscious of that and use them where appropriate, where necessary. Yeah, it is a really important point, and one I clearly feel strongly about, and one we all need to feel strongly about because it's so key. And the difficulty is it's invisible to us, isn't it? You create this thing over here and it's invisible. You don't know the impact. You don't get any feedback to say how much resources you've just used in generating whatever. Okay, folks. So just to wrap up, we've got a few slides that I'd like to share. Which I'm now sharing the wrong screen, which is really helpful. So let me try that properly. Okay, slick as ever, Richard. There we go. Right, if you could bring that on screen, that would be great. You'd think after 118 of episodes of this, I'd be able to transition slides, but who knows? Right, Goals to Results Conference on the 17th of March 2026. The topic is performance improvement in an AI-driven world. You may have gathered this stuff matters to us, and we really want to help improvement practitioners make it a success. Join us at the University of Warwick. At the slate for that day. Promises to be a fantastic day. We have an amazing headline of both headline speakers, guest speakers, panel discussions, a raft. I've seen the initial drafts of all the workshops that our team have been generating. Boy, oh boy, are you in for a treat. And I'm not just saying that because I want you to come. I'm saying that because I've never seen such quality. It's amazing. Do come. It'll be great to have you with us. Talking of quality, there's Damien with the latest episode of Uncommon Sense. Podcast quality as ever, 15-minute session on improvement projects when they don't progress. You will find all of this stuff, all of the catalogue of PMI Live, all of our podcasts and videos, tools on the Knowledge Hub, which is available at pmi.co.uk. Go to the top. And finally, where else will you be on the final Friday of January, other than with us at 1500 hours UK time to consider this: stop pushing, start shifting mindsets, practical ways to tackle resistance to change. And if the discussion we've had today is anything to go by, that's a key topic. So all that remains to say is thank you so much for joining us. I mean it when I say it's our privilege and our pleasure to deliver these sessions to our audiences, and it wouldn't be the same without you joining us. So thank you so much. Thank you to the team that have contributed to the discussions today, and great to have you with us. We will shortly provide a co-pilot summary of this meeting, which will be in the chat and available to you very shortly. On that note, for those of you celebrating, have a great festive period. Thank you for 2025 and look forward to seeing you on the 30th of January at 1500 hours. Thanks, folks. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
See everybody.
Thanks, guys.